Some cars are famous for their beauty. Others are famous for their speed. And then there are a few cars that are remembered simply because no one could quite believe they were real. This story is about one of those cars. A car that showed up at the 2013 Los Angeles Auto Show and instantly confused, shocked, and even entertained everyone who saw it. It was called the Youabian Puma. And yes, that really was its name. The Uabian Puma was the brainchild of Dr. Cambis Youabian, a plastic surgeon from Beverly Hills, California. He was not a car designer, engineer, or even someone from the auto industry. He was a man who liked cars and wanted to make one that would stand out. According to Youabian, rich people were bored with the usual choices. Ferraris, Lamborghinis, Bentleys, they were too common. He wanted to build something that nobody else had. The result was a car that looked part monster truck, part convertible cruiser, and maybe part spaceship, depending on who you asked. The Puma was massive. It was about 242 inches long, 93 inches wide, and 72 inches tall. It had a wheelbase of 162 inches. To put it simply, it was bigger than most pickup trucks and longer than some limousines. It weighed around 7,716 pounds. And it rode on tires that were 44 inches tall and 21 inches wide, mounted on 20-inch wheels. That is not a typo. This was the kind of car that could make a Hummer H2 feel small. Under the hood was a General Motors LS7 engine. That is a 7.0-litre V8, the same kind you might find in a Chevrolet Corvette Z06. It made 505 horsepower and 470 pound-feet of torque. It could go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in about 5.9 seconds. Not bad for something that looked like it might crush smaller cars just by parking next to them. Some listings said it could hit a top speed of 170 miles per hour, though it is hard to imagine anyone trying that. The Puma had a retractable hardtop roof borrowed from a Volvo C70. It also had tail lights from a Buick Enclave. The chassis was a mix of aluminium and steel, and the body used fiberglass panels. Fuel came from dual tanks that held about 18 gallons in total. Inside, the car had leather seats, cruise control, a navigation system, satellite radio, and Bluetooth. It seated 4 people and tried to feel like a luxury car inside, even if the outside looked like a cartoon drawing come to life. When it was shown to the public in 2013, the Uabian Puma caused quite a reaction. Some people laughed, some stared in silence. Websites like Top Gear called it one of the biggest fails of the century. Wired magazine called it the most insane thing at the LA Auto Show. Dr. Youabian did not enjoy that criticism. At one point, he threatened legal action against news sites that made fun of the car. Only a few Puma cars were ever made. Each one cost around $895,000 to $1.1 million. They were sold privately, only to buyers who passed background checks. That is how rare it was. The Uabian Puma might not be everyone's idea of a dream car, but it was definitely one of the most unforgettable cars ever made. Whether it was a mistake or a masterpiece depends on who you ask. One thing is certain: no one forgot the day they saw it.
In a world filled with supercars and luxury trucks, there exists a strange, powerful machine that looks like it rolled off a movie set, or maybe just escaped a secret military base. It is not shaped like a sports car, and it does not try to blend in. It is fast, it is loud, and it moves on tracks instead of wheels. It is called the Ripsaw EV2 Jet. And no, this is not a toy. It is a real machine built by real people. But where did this strange tank-like vehicle come from? And who actually thought it was a good idea to let civilians own something like this? The story begins with 2 brothers. Mike Howe and Jeff Howe. They founded Howe and Howe Technologies in Maine, United States. Back in the early 2000s, these two started building unmanned military vehicles. The first version was called the Ripsaw MS-1. It was tested by the United States Army as a fast, tracked, unmanned ground vehicle. Later, it was followed by the MS-2 and MS-3. These vehicles were made for military use only. But then, for reasons unknown to common sense, the Howe brothers decided to build a version for civilians, and thus the Ripsaw EV2 was born. EV2 stands for Extreme Vehicle 2, which honestly sounds like something you would name a roller coaster or a video game. The EV2 Jet is built on a custom dual-track chassis made from aerospace-grade aluminum. The entire thing weighs about 8,000 pounds and can float in water up to 4 feet deep. It is not just for show. It can climb slopes up to 75%, and it turns in place thanks to its electronic steering. It rides on a suspension system that uses coilover and air shocks, giving it about 13.4 inches of travel. This is more than most trucks, and certainly more than anything that looks like a tank. Now, what gives this machine its power is a 6.6-litre Duramax V8 turbo diesel engine. It produces around 600 horsepower, though some versions are tuned to go even higher, closer to 700. The engine is paired with an Allison automatic transmission. The Ripsaw EV2 Jet can go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in around 3 to 5.5 seconds. That is not just fast for a tracked vehicle, it is fast, period. Some even claim it can hit a top speed of 80 miles per hour, though we do not recommend testing that in your backyard. Inside, the EV2 Jet is more like a luxury car than a war machine. It has leather seats for two, heating, air conditioning, a surround sound system, and a rear-view camera. It even has gull-wing doors, just to remind you that it is not your average off-roader. The fuel tank holds about 40 gallons and gives it a range of roughly 300 miles. Not great for daily commuting, unless your office is on top of a mountain. You might have seen this machine in movies like Mad Max Fury Road, The Fate of the Furious, and G.I. Joe Retaliation. It also appeared in the Discovery Channel show Black Ops Brothers, which, yes, is real. Even though it started as a military prototype, the Ripsaw EV2 Jet has somehow become a strange mix of luxury, power, and complete overkill. Each one takes about 4 to 6 months to build and costs between $295,000 and $400,000. It is not cheap, but then again, neither is a monster with tracks that goes 60 miles per hour. In the quiet village of Great Rollright in Oxfordshire, England, something very unusual was built in a garden. Not a fancy car, not a spaceship, not even a barbecue shed. It was a shed on wheels, a real garden shed that could move, and not just crawl along the road, but race faster than some sports cars. This strange but true story is about a man named Kevin Nix, a mechanic and gardener who did something most people would never even try. He turned a broken Volkswagen Passat into the world's fastest shed. And yes, it is fully road legal. Kevin Nix first got the idea in 2015. He had an old Volkswagen Passat 4Motion sitting around, not doing much. Most people would sell it or scrap it. But Kevin had a different plan. He built a steel frame, added real wooden walls like a garden shed, and kept everything needed to drive it legally. Lights, mirrors, seat belts, and even air conditioning. He called it the fastest shed. It took him about a year and cost around £50,000. The shed had a working engine, electric windows, remote locking, and even a hydraulic suspension system that let it bounce up and down. If you saw it parked on a lawn, you would think someone was just really serious about garden storage. The original engine was the Passat's own, but Kevin added a nitrous oxide system to boost the power. With that, the shed had around 265 horsepower. In 2017, Kevin drove the shed at Elvington Airfield and set a world speed record of 80.77 miles per hour. He beat a record that had been held by Ed China, a well-known television presenter whose shed had hit around 58 miles per hour. But Kevin was not done. In 2018, at Pendine Sands in Wales, he made the shed go even faster, hitting 101.046 miles per hour. Just a few months later, at another Straightliners event on the same beach, he reached 101.581 miles per hour. Later, Kevin upgraded the shed again. He replaced the engine with a more powerful Audi RS4 B5 engine. Then he swapped that for the RS4 B7 version. This newer engine had around 455 horsepower. He spent about £80,000 more on upgrades. In a standing mile test, the shed hit a speed of 106.123 miles per hour, according to Guinness World Records. That is faster than some sports cars. And it still looked exactly like a wooden shed you might find behind someone's house. Kevin even took the shed on long drives. In one trip, he drove from Land's End to John O'Groats. He also completed the North Coast 500 route in Scotland in 12 hours. The shed has been seen on social media, YouTube, and even listed as an Airbnb experience where people can ride with Kevin, drink coffee, and ask him questions. Despite being a shed, it has power windows, working headlights, and a real car registration. So yes, the world's fastest shed is real. It is not the most beautiful car or the most practical one, but it might be the most unexpected. And that is probably what makes it hard to forget. There is a tiny car that shoots flames, sounds like a jet, and can outpace some of the fastest cars on the road. It is not a Ferrari or a Lamborghini. It is a Smart Fortwo. But not just any Smart Fortwo. This one was turned into a fire-breathing machine by a man named Bill Berg, who runs Rocket Billy Racing out of Colorado. It is called the Rocket Billy Jet Smart, and it is probably the only smart car in the world that runs on a jet engine. Sounds made up? It is not. And it might be one of the strangest but real cars you will ever learn about. The base car for this project was a regular Smart Fortwo, likely around the 2008 model year. Normally, these little city cars have about 60 horsepower and are known more for their parking skills than speed. But Bill Berg had other ideas. He took this tiny car and fit it with a General Electric T58 GE3 gas turbine engine. That engine was originally designed for helicopters like the UH-1 Huey, you know, the one from war movies. Not the kind of thing you expect to find in the back of a microcar. This jet engine is not just for show. It makes around 2,000 horsepower when using the afterburner. That is not a typo. 2,000 horsepower in a car that weighs just a few pounds more than a motorcycle. With that kind of power, the Rocket Billy Jet Smart can reach speeds of up to 220 miles per hour. It can go from 0 to around 170 miles per hour in about 9 seconds, which is fast enough to make your teeth rattle. And yes, it still has windshield wipers and headlights. Somehow, it is street legal. Now, of course, running a helicopter engine in a car has a few side effects. The car burns through fuel like a jet does. It can drink about 15 gallons of fuel in just 5 minutes. So, if you are planning to drive it to the grocery store, make sure it is the grocery store across the street. And maybe bring extra fuel in your backpack. Bill Berg shows off his Jet Smart at air shows and car events all over the world. Rocket Billy Racing also features other jet-powered vehicles, including a jet-powered school bus and a jet quad. But the Jet Smart gets a lot of attention because people do not expect to see a tiny city car spitting flames and breaking sound barriers. Most people see a Smart Fortwo and think of parallel parking, not fireballs and military turbines. The Rocket Billy Jet Smart has appeared in a YouTube series called Ridiculous Rides and has been featured on websites like Mercedes Blog and Road and Track. It is one of those cars that makes people laugh at first, then stare in shock. Bill Berg keeps it running and brings it to events, and surprisingly, he says he has not been pulled over yet. Maybe the police are just afraid it will take off. This is not your average garage build. It is part toy, part machine, part science experiment. Bill Berg took a smart car and gave it a second life as a jet-powered speed demon. Whether it is practical or not is beside the point. It exists, it works, and it is loud.